What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of Man Get Modified Fabrication Off-Road. As you can tell, it's a little bit nicer around here. If you caught my last video, I talked about how we were going to be going on spring break with my family. We're currently in Florida today. We're in St. Augustine, and today we are going to be meeting with a couple of really cool people. One of them being Riley Locke, who is the owner of Locked Off-Road. I'm really excited to take you guys along with me and show you what Locked Off-Road has to offer. Uh, All right, we're here with Riley from Locked Off-Road. He's standing back here behind
Hey guys.
me. We got a few questions for him. We're going to show you around the shop a little bit and see what he really has to offer. So we're sitting here with Riley from Locked Off-Road. Why don't you give us a little introduction of who you are and what you do here?
Right on. Hey guys, I'm Riley Locke from Locked Off-Road Shocks, and as you can see, we build shocks. We've got coilovers, we've got smooth body shocks, triple bypass, and have some 3.0 bypass here in the next month and a half ready. All the different hydro bumps you could want, I build.
All right, give us a little history on Locked Off-Road and how it got its name and where it came from.
Gotcha. So when I was about 16, all of my buddies and we were building trucks, right? Everyone was welding and building bumpers and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, well, this is definitely the industry I want to be in and the avenue I want to go down with my life, being self-employed, build a business. I just didn't know what I wanted to fit into. And I knew everyone was building trucks, everyone was welding, everyone was building bumpers. What could I do that's different? And after playing around with my own truck personally, I had swayaways. I figured there's only like 3 companies that are building shocks at the time that I was aware of. We had Fox, we had King, we had Swayaway. So I figured even though it was a big barrier of entry, trying to battle the big dogs, once you're in, because there's only three companies at the time. There's Fox, King, Swayaway. I was going to make sure there was Locked in there too. So I figured I'd build a shock company. A lot harder than I thought. I started probably tinkering around when I was 18. Now I'm 29. So 11 years later, we started out with our hydraulic bump stops first to test the market, make sure people actually wanted to buy something that wasn't, your name brand shocks, King, Fox, and no longer Swayaway, but Race Runner. And the bump stops did well. I had enough people ask me about real shocks, like, are you building coilovers, you building bypass, to eventually after like 5 to 6 years of just doing bump stops, then I started getting into coilovers. The next stage after coilovers and smooth body shocks, because they're basically the same shock, a smooth body and a coilover minus the threads and the coilover parts. The next thing was a 3-tube bypass, which is a little bit more complicated to figure out, but I hired some engineers and we got it figured out.
So originally I reached out to Riley here about these right here. Just like he said, this was kind of one of his first products that he came out with. This was one of the first things that I bought from him. It's actually, as of right now, it's the only thing that I have. My buddy Trev and I, we both run these bump stops, and we've had extremely good luck with them. We've been pretty hard on them. I actually jumped my Jeep pretty high in the air, and it landed so hard that it bent the bump stop pad, and the bump stop's been perfectly fine. I have had no issues whatsoever. Trev blew a coilover out, and I had mentioned this in the past in a other video, that he actually drove home on that bump stop, and it sat for like 3 days like that. No loss in pressure, no leaks, no nothing. I've been extremely happy with those products, and really that's what's hooked me up with Riley today.
So the other thing that makes these cool is, let's say you want to start out with a 2 to 3 inch lift. If you have a bump stop that's your normal standard pin style, you weld it in and you're done. Then you want to go to a 5 or 6 inch long arm kit after. Well, your bump stop might not be in the same place it needs to be in for your new long travel kit or your long arm kit. So with the adjustable bumps, if you mount it in the center, it allows you to go down 1.5 inches or up 1.5 inches. And that really makes this one a cool one.
So what makes your product stand out?
So the first thing I would have to say, and this goes for all the shocks, it's not so much the shocks, what they do to stand out. It's more of when you're buying from Locked, what are you going to get? And not only is it a top tier, high quality product at a very, very reasonable price, considering what you're getting, but you're also getting access to me. Not to say that I'm all important and I'm special, but if you need help with something or you've got a problem, or who are you going to reach out to at 11 o'clock at night, or call whenever you want to call them, or email whenever you want to email, or text whenever you want to text them? Because the big name brands, you don't have access to them like that unless you're somebody spending millions of dollars. Where what I try to do is any customer that buys from me, you're going to get access to me. That way, if you've got a question, you're stuck somewhere. Oh no, dude, it's the weekend. I'm not helping you. Bug me on Monday. No, that's not what we do here. If you've got a question and you need help right away, I'm at your disposal. Call me. If I miss your call, shoot me an email, shoot me a text. It's just me. So I might be busy, but I'm going to get back to you right away. And I usually check my emails and stuff at night too. So if you miss me during the daytime, I can fire back at 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, whatever I'm up doing, whatever I'm doing. So that's one big thing, is you get a little bit better of the customer service than you get with the other brands, in my opinion. The other thing that makes us different, one of the items, is our compression adjusters and short fin reservoirs that come standard on all of our coilovers, all of our remote reservoir smooth body shocks, as well as our OEM replacement shocks. So it's a short fin, adds a little bit more displacement for cooling capacity. It's not, I wouldn't say it's a cooling reservoir, but it actually does help a little bit. And then we have our 22-point compression adjusters.
So explain this a little bit. So for me, yes, I have coilovers, but I don't 100% know how everything works with them. So
Gotcha.
Explain that a little bit.
So essentially what this does, it has valving in it just like the shocks do. And the hydraulic fluid, shock oil, flows through and it hits a piston inside. And as you're tightening it down, making it harder, you're putting more pressure on the piston and pulling the shims tighter to it. And that's going to make it firmer. So it has to battle the piston and the shims inside the reservoir, as well as the nitrogen. When you soften it up, go open all the way, now you're free bleeding it. So that way it's not actually even hitting the shims, it's bypassing straight through them. So you can have all the way open, is just like if you didn't have any compression adjusters on the shocks, and then as soon as you start clicking it, you're pressing the valve shims tighter and tighter and tighter to making it firm. And all the way soft, it can really change your ride. So that way, let's say you don't know how you want your ride set up, you don't know how you want your valving. I throw a standard stack in it for what I think it's going to be, and it's slightly off. This gives you a complete range of motion to tune it in yourself until we can meet up again and do another tune. So that's another cool thing. I like to talk about my threaded bump stops here. This is our 2-inch by 4-inch threaded bump stop. And what makes these super cool is that you can adapt the height that the bump stop is going to be mounted at based on the collar, which I can put that down for a second, show you something over here.
So something real quick about these, actually. So for Trev, he's got a JK, and on the JKs, they have a hole on the top of the coil spring mount. And this actually fits perfect inside that hole in that coil spring mount. And you can use these collars to lock them in place. So you have a bump stop that sits inside your coil spring, and it's almost perfect. We have a buddy that actually used a similar set of bump stop that has collars like this as well. And it works perfect for his bump stop setup. Now, so for instance, on something like this, let's say you want to take this and weld a part onto it that goes to your frame. Then this is fully adjustable up and down. It really helps you dial in where your full bump needs to be. This is a huge feature to really help you set up your ride exactly how it needs to be for every type of terrain possible. What's your favorite product that you have here?
I'd say right now it is my triple bypass shock. And the reason it's my favorite is because it's the most complicated to make, in my opinion. And so anything that's a little bit challenging just kind of makes it more fun. It has 2 compression tubes and a rebound tube. It's your standard 3-tube bypass, remote reservoir hose, my short fin reservoirs. It's got all of my touches that I would like in a shock built. So this is my favorite product right now.
Keep going.
My next product I'm going to make is going to be a 3.0 3 tube and a 3.0 5 tube as well for the bigger trucks, or even, you know, a Tacoma that wants to run a 3.0 shock. That's fine.
Okay, let me ask you this then. What's the benefit of a 5 tube versus a 3 tube?
More zones to tune the shock.
Okay, so it just gives you more tunability.
Yeah.
Then basically.
So on a 3 tube, we have one rebound tube. We have the rebound that's already in the piston, which, you know, is about right here right now. Probably right there. So the rebound valving that's in the piston, this side. We have the rebound tube, so it's basically 2 different rebound zones in the shock. But then you also have the 2 compression tubes and the compression valving in the shock. So it gives you different personalities of a shock all in one. So back in the day, they used to run multiple shocks on a corner. They'd run 2 to 4 smooth body shocks on a corner on these rigs, and each one was tuned slightly different. So that way one would kick in more on the heavier stuff and the lighter stuff would be carried by a different shock.
So that makes sense. We're like in Michigan, you have Silver Lake sand dunes.
Yeah.
You'd see like the old
cars
would have like
2, 4 shocks.
Yeah, and I always, like growing up, I'd be like, what the heck is that all about? So that makes perfect
different
sense
dampening.
then.
Yeah. The 5 tube, you know, just more tubes, more dampening control, more zones. So this one, we have a zone here for compression and a zone here for compression, where it kicks the oil back into it. On this side, we have 1 rebound zone. So if I add another rebound tube and another compression tube over here, it just gives you different levels of tuning. And it's more noticeable in longer shocks than it is in shorter shocks, but just triple bypass, 5 tube bypass, they're cool shocks.
All right. So for somebody that doesn't know a whole lot about coilovers, could you give us a breakdown of kind of like what all of this right here is and what does it do? Yeah,
so we'll start out here. So this is outside the shock. First thing that protects your shock, the oil, the performance, is going to be your dust cap and your wiper seal. So this is your dust cap. It has 3 Allen bolts that bolted into the bottom of the seal head. This is your first line of defense. This keeps your dirt, your dust, your debris. You see how I moved it up and it moved the debris up with it? So that's your first line of defense to keep your shock oil clean and your shock working longer, longevity. The second stage is our seal head. So we've got the DU bushings, we've got seals inside, we've got O-rings outside. The one thing that my seal head has different than like a King or a Fox is dual O-rings. Dual O-rings serve 2 purposes. 1, redundancy. You know, one could get a scratch or a nick or whatever. Might be my fault. Or one just prematurely failed. You know, bunch of stuff happens when you're manufacturing a product. Redundancy is nice because if one fails, you have the other one. That's the easiest way to explain it. Also with service intervals. So normally people will rebuild your shocks after about 25,000 miles. And I'm not recommending this, but I have customers that have 40, 50, 60, 70,000 miles on their shocks and have not rebuilt them. And I blame it on the redundant seals because maybe one of them is going to wear out at its normal 25,000, 30,000, but then the other one is still fresh. It's not going to be fresh after 4 or 5 years, but I've had a lot less failures since I've been doing 2 O-rings on the seal head. So that's a cool feature. In here, we've got our seal. That's our wiper seal on the shaft. So you pull out snap ring, which I can do that for you, just to show you the whole picture. Wrong side. I want this one. Come on. As a group. Don't want to use anything sharp in these because they're going to get put back together. So that's our wiper seal. It does exactly what you think it would do. It hugs the shaft tight and it wipes all the junk out of it and it keeps the oil inside, keeps what you don't want out, the dirt, keeps the oil inside. So that's how that gets put together. It's pretty simple. Snap ring goes here. Then after the seal head, the next thing we have is a little shaft spacer. This just keeps the shock from fully bottoming out inside of itself and smashing your valve shims into your seal head. So that puts a buffer between them. And then the next stage is going to be our top out washer. Just very thick shim. It's essentially just a washer. Then we have our compression shims. You know they're compression shims because they go on the bottom. And the bottom has a bigger face, and on my piston in particular. Rebound has a smaller face. You know it's a compression valving on the bottom because you think about it like this. When you hit a bump, your shock shaft goes up inside the shock body. Oil flows through these outer larger ports. I'll show you a bit easier. It flows through the outer larger ports first when you're going up. And that's going to take the shims on the backside, the compression shims, and it's going to bend them. It's going to force the oil through and bend them like that. And the valving is what controls the shock. So you have all of these shims stacked up in their own thicknesses, in their own orders. You know, you can take a smaller OD shim and stick it in the beginning behind your larger compression shims and then rebuild your stack that way. Now, obviously, I wouldn't swap the shim over. I would add another one in the pack. But that makes a flutter stack. And the flutter stack is great for your smaller bumps. It helps alleviate some of that stress on the smaller bumps because you're able to open your valving a little bit better. Sorry. I'll just continue where I left off.
All right, go ahead.
I'll call him back. Don't worry. Like I said, I'm accessible. But yeah, so the flutter stack's great for like all of our OEM applications. I do a flutter stack. When you're driving down the road, hit a little speed bump or hit a crack in the road, the flutter stack just eats that up. Makes it super comfortable.
So for like your
or
bigger
washboard roads too.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the roads in Michigan then, if you've never been there, that's how they all are.
Yeah. Crappy roads. Flutter
yes.
stacks are great.
But for your bigger bumps and things like that, this probably is not the way to go then.
It depends on how I'm tuning the shock, and I still test from time to time.
I guess what the application for the vehicle would be.
I usually use flutter stacks for guys that want a very comfortable on-road ride. That's where I've been using them recently. So that would be, you know, we went all the way through the compression side of the piston. Rebound side of the piston, I'll be honest, rebound is where my education lacked. I didn't know how much valving I would need to properly tune the rebound of a shock. And OEM versus race is completely different.
Right, that makes sense.
OEM, the trend is load the rebound side thick. We want 15 thousandths thickness shims, which is this stack right here. So we want our thicker shims. I'll show you an example. You see the thickness of that compared to the thickness of that one. I don't know if it's easy to tell, but this is a 12 thousandths. This is a 15 thousandths.
Yeah.
So the way they bend, the thicker the shim, the slower the shock will move. So when we say we want more rebound, we can mean like more rebound valving to slow it down. Or if you want it to rebound faster, you want thinner valve shims on the rebound side. So I'm figuring that out now after having some testing and tuning, which is good to learn at least. A little bit late, but better than never. So the rebound side of the valving is the smaller OD. Starts with the 1.60 OD rather than the compression side. Compression side starts at the 1.75. So it's an easy way to tell if you're putting your shock back together yourself, am I putting it back together the right way?
You can see on that, there's kind of like a step right there.
Yep. So 1.75 compression, 1.6 rebound.
You can definitely tell on that.
Yep. So you want to make sure rebound faces up. So you make sure you're rebuilding the shock properly. Next part of our piston is our wear bands. Just keeps the piston in the right spot in the shock. Doesn't let it go side to side. If they wear out, there's a chance that you're going to cut this aluminum inside your steel bodies. So when we're rebuilding them, we include a new wear band in the kit. Keeps the shock running right. That's pretty much it. Next stage to finish the shock off is just lock in red Loctite on our nut, and that's it.
And that nut goes
Right here.
Yep, right there on the top, which holds everything together.
Yep, holds all the guts together.
As it's going up and down, that nut is what keeps everything contained. If that nut for some reason never came off, the whole thing could fall right out. So that's why you use this. All right, do you have any updates or changes that you'd like to talk about with your product?
So this right here is my prototype. And it's not the prettiest thing, but it's a start. So our standard coilovers are going to run a 3-inch ID spring, which is these little guys. The 3.75-inch ID spring normally is reserved for a 3.0 coilover. So what I've been trying to design for a couple weeks now is a conversion kit. So you can run this larger spring, which almost fits the other spring, this larger spring on our 2.5-inch coilovers. Benefits of that is you have different options for spring rates. You don't have to go dual rate right away because you can get up to a 24-inch long spring in a single rate heavy. So this helps on our bigger lifted diesel trucks you see around here in Florida and Texas and all over the South. So that's a cool feature. It also gives guys with the larger, heavier F-150s or Silverados that are pre-running an option where if they don't want to go straight to a 3.0 coilover, which I don't make right now, but I'm going to come out with soon, you can run the 3.75-inch collars and springs on our standard 2.5-inch coilover. So it's going to save you a little bit of money, and it's just a cooler option. It's an upgrade. So this is my first prototype idea, was taking our normal slider and just adapting to, these will be billet anodized collars that'll slide over the ends of it. Too bulky, it's ugly, doesn't pass my test, so it's cool to look at though. Now I'm just going to make a single piece just like this, but for the right OD, and the ID is going to stay the same for the shock. The bottom, I'm almost there with it. I'm taking this round curve out and I'm chamfering it. So instead of it going rounded like a fillet, it's going to be chamfered and come straight at an angle. I think it'll give it a better look, and it'll help clear tight angles better than this bulb. It'll be cut. That's the lower, and then the upper, as you can see, is right here, and it slides up right there. So that's one upgrade. The next one is, as you can see, we use standard -6 hoses on all of our shocks. They work great, and they worked great for the last couple years, but bigger is sometimes better, and in this case, more oil flow is going to be better for us. So we're going to larger ID hoses, and it's going to do a little bit of change to our top caps. I'm not going to do this style anymore. I'll change it a little bit so we have a better profile to mount the hose fittings to. But generally speaking, this is what it'll look like. Bigger hoses, bigger fittings, more oil flow, better performance.
One more thing I really would like to touch on. He talked about how he is somebody that he's very easy to get a hold of. For me, when I was doing my bump stops, I didn't know what pressure I needed. I just sent him a message on Instagram. He answered me right back. It was probably late when I sent it to him because typically we don't start working on our stuff until after my son goes to bed, which is pretty late. He answered me right back. I was able to get that set up. We had a few questions about some other things, and it was a little bit too much to text, so I just said, hey, man, do you have a second to talk? He sent me his phone number. I called him up. We talked for a bit, and that's actually how we were able to set this up, and I was able to come out here and really see what he's doing. When you talk to him, he's a real person. I mean, this is it.
I'm here.
He's just like the rest of us. He's a dude in the garage just building cool stuff, just like what we're doing. And I think when you're going to go with a product, that's huge. I want that personally, to reach out to somebody that I know is tangible, who's right there, who cares about their product, who has integrity, and can really vouch and say, my product is going to hold up. And for some reason, if it doesn't, I will make that right. So in conclusion, you can tell that Riley's a stand-up dude. He's here to help anybody out. He makes some awesome products. He ran us through a ton of information. I I was extremely happy to be here. I feel very fortunate to be able to come here and meet a guy like him and to have him show us around the shop. This was an awesome experience for me, and I hope it was an okay experience for you.
Wasn't too bad.
I really enjoyed it, and I'm really excited for you guys to see why you should pick Lock Off-Road. All right, so give us a brief introduction of who you are and what you do here at Locked Off-Road.
Hey guys, I'm Riley from Riley Lock.